Hello guys, and welcome to a quick tutorial on how to render a 3D model onto a 2D target and then have transparency. And that can be used for rendering kind of like an avatar of the character's head or the whole body right into the UI. Okay, now let's start right away. The first thing we need to do is to set up the UI, right? The UI will be pretty straightforward. Let me go ahead and create a new folder, call it widget. Can't see it. Widget. Okay. Now in here, let me add in a user interface widget blueprint and user widget. This is going to be called WPP UI or something. Yeah. Oops. WPP in-game UI, something like that. And internally, we need to set up some very fundamental things. First of all is a canvas panel, and in there an image, and that image will be what we rendered out. Okay. And then let me just make it anchor to the center and then make it big enough. So I'm thinking that this thing will be, I guess this big, something like that. 256 by 256. Okay, anchor to the center again. I can use alignment to position it slightly to the side and a little bit higher. That should be fine. Not really trying to do anything too fancy. I'm gonna render the head of the player character into this canvas, into this image here. So this will be headshot. Compile and save it. Okay, the next thing to do is to go to the player character. If I play this and hit F8 and grab the model here, I can do Control E to open the editor and then stop the play. And then let me add in just one thing here in the begin play. Now I'm going for like a little bit hiked in way here. Ideally though, the UI should be done in the player controller, but this project doesn't have any. So let's just do it in here. Okay, so I'm gonna do create widget, and the widget will be our one and only WPP in-game UI, and then we have the value there, and that has to be then add to the viewport. However, the add to viewport needs to know who is the owner. There, we need to specify the owner here. This is a player controller that we have to pass in. Okay, so you can do get player controller, I guess, in this particular instance, because this is a single player thing. A better way of doing this is actually do the whole thing in the player controller so that the player controller can be just a self-reference there. That would be better. Okay. I think that's it. So now if we play the game, we should be able to see that image there on the lower right corner. Okay, now it's the time that we set up a material here. Let me go for a material. I'll call this guy M, headshot. Okay, and in there then we need to have a base color here. I'm gonna go for a texture parameter. Texture sample parameter 2D. Yeah, this one will be headshot texture, something like that. Okay, and at the moment it's just that. Oh, and this is being used for the UI as a surface. Material domain should be user interface instead. And if you want to have transparency, of course, the blend mode should be translucent, and alpha can go there. Okay. All right. Now back here to the WP in-game UI, then we can go to the image and change it to the headshot. Okay. At the moment, it's a kind of interesting preview image. Okay. So now we have this. Okay. The next thing to do is to set up a renderer here. Not a renderer, an actual actor here to specify what do we want to render. I'm gonna call this guy a BP photo booth. Photo booth. And this photo booth will not have anything other than what we want to render, right? So let me start with a skeletal mesh, and this will be whatever mesh we're using there. Or you can use Blueprint to set it to be the actual player character so that it's dynamically changing. And then we can also play an animation, and the animation can be like an idle or something. I mean, look for idle combat variation 1. Maybe. All right. And then let me add in also a scene capture component 2D. This one is in charge of capturing the scene. Let me drag it to the same level as the mesh, and then this one is where we're looking through to render. Let me go a bit further so we are sure that we can see stuff. And there's no lighting here, so let me add in something like a static mesh, and in there let me just look for the sky and WSM sky sphere, so that we have something. Okay, and then we can actually change that to other lights, but this ensures that we can see stuff at least. What is that? Is that the shadow? Interesting. All right. So now I have this renderer here. Okay, and we can go back here to the scene capture 2D component. Let me rename that to renderer. Or capture, I guess, would be more. Capture. Okay, this one will be the one we actually render out, use to render out stuff, and whatever passing to the texture target will be the one. So yeah, that will be it. Okay, at the moment it doesn't have anything, so we can create one. Let me look for texture, and then render target, and this one will be RT, render target, and then headshot. Okay, and then we can already be specifying the texture being used here to be our render target headshot. So RT headshot, and currently it's empty. And then in the photo booth, do the same thing here. All right. Now, sometimes you want this to be dynamically done, right? You can absolutely do that. At the moment, I'm gonna go for a cheaper approach, which is just get it in here. You can see how it's already rendering, right? And you can also see this is completely, I guess, transparent. That's just because the alpha is flipped there. So holding down O and click so that you can create a 1- node and just connect that to the alpha and output to the opacity. Save it. You can see now we do see the character in there. Okay. Now if we play here right now, you can see we have our character there. The problem is that that character is stationary, right? Nothing to be moving. And we know that we are actually playing an animation in there. Why is it not? Well, the reason is there is no world or no space for this animation to be in, right? This is just a preview, right? We're not seeing through in this viewport. So we have to create something somewhere to get it actually ticking and rendering. The problem is that your world, right, your level could be like quite complex. You can have all different kind of lightings. So if you just put it in here, right, it will work. It's actually in there, right? But you're gonna have to be really careful about where you place it. And you can also see that whole skylight is actually clipping into the walls. So not quite, I guess, convenient, or I should say safe, right? And it's also just feels like a hack in that case. Okay, you can of course wrap something around the character, make it invisible to the player somehow, right? But we're actually going to do something a little bit interesting here in the WP in-game UI here in the graph, right? Oh, let me go back here, and I need to actually make these all variables. This one is variable, yeah. Okay, so we can actually hack in a viewport here and use that to be the creation of a new world, and we can just place our photo booth in that world. Okay, so let me delete that photo booth here. It's gone now. Okay, now back here to the WP in-game UI, and then what we can do is in the event construct, we can actually construct object from class, and there is a particular class called viewport. Okay, now this viewport is nothing more than a viewport you see here, right? It's something alive, and then it has a very tiny little preview scene with whatever you can throw in there, and that's what we're creating. Okay, and then with this viewport created, okay, we can then add it to the canvas panel as the child. Let me rename that thing, root panel or something. Yeah, and then here in the graph we can just say, hey, let's grab the root panel and then add child, and then we can drag that into there. Okay, now let's play the game. You can see now on the upper left corner there's a little black thing there. See that? Right, that is basically the viewport. Has nothing there yet. Okay, what we can do then is just add something to the viewport, and we can do that by calling spawn on the viewport. So this is the one. Okay, and what we're spawning is basically our photo booth. So we're putting in our photo booth into that little viewport world. That way it's not in our current gameplay world, right? Not in this world, but in the world of that small preview scene. Okay, and then let's take a look at that. Okay, so now you can see we're no longer seeing, we don't have any of the actual photo booths in our environment, but it's actually live and it's in a different world basically. Right, very interesting, right? But you can also see how that viewport is trying to render it as well. See that? It's see a little foot in there, right? That's fine. You can actually just rely on this viewport and to be your renderer, but there's a bunch of things hard to do. For example, how do you change the focal length of the camera in that viewport? The short answer is maybe not easy as I went through the source code, and I think that one is not exposed. Okay, so well, if that's the case, then I'm gonna make it actually be really small or almost invisible. Okay, so I'm gonna say get slot as the canvas slot. That's basically the object or the component that we can set up the size and stuff. Size. I'm gonna make it only like 1 pixel and 1 pixel. If you play it now, you can see, well, it's just invisible. It's because it's 1 pixel, right? And we can also say, okay, well, we can also place it, anchor, right? Set anchors, and we can use the same anchor of our image, and then it's basically behind our image. So let me get the headshot. Slot as canvas slot as well, and then we can get the anchor here, and now be the anchor too, so that they're anchored the same. And then also we can just say, hey, well, our headshot is having a higher the order here, so the image will have a 1 as the order, so it's drew last. All right, so now that way the viewport is just behind the image. It's active, right? All we are utilizing is that world of that viewport, and we're using our own renderer, right? Our own photo booth to render it. And here we can play some fun stuff here, right? One thing we can do is actually gather the static mesh for the sky, and then we can add in a I guess a point light or something. We can add whatever we want, right, to this. Okay, now you can see we're seeing just our character with a point light. One thing that's pretty cool here is that you can see how without that background, the capture actually use whatever that's behind to be transparent, right? How cool is that? Okay, and then we can also go here and say, all right, let me make it a bit more fun by changing the lighting a bit. Control D to have a copy and drag it down here into the back. I can make this one red because this robot is on fire. Okay. So cool. And then next thing I want to do is basically grab the capture, and that's what I mean that this is really cool to use the photo boost, because you can change whatever you want with the camera, right? Which wouldn't be easy with just that viewport. You can see how we can get a close-up headshot, right? And then just drag it closer to the side. Only thing that's a bit annoying is that you have to go back and forth to see are you rendering it properly or not. But yeah, now this is how you render a character here, right? As like a headshot. Can be really similar to games like Dota or whatever that has the 3D headshot, StarCraft, right? Warcraft, those kind of games, they have the headshot of the unit you're controlling. All right, that should be it for this video. One thing I'm always wondering is that how we can actually avoid using the viewport, because we are actually, I guess, spoiled here with the viewport thing, because we construct the whole viewport, and that viewport has a whole bunch of things internally, which all shouldn't be too heavy, right? But we're still rendering like 2 pixels or 1 pixels. I guess 1 pixel here from that viewport, which is no big deal, right? We're rendering only 1 pixel. So it's not a big deal. However, we're still rendering something that we don't need to. So if you can work around that viewport, then you have to do all kinds of things like create the world or something, right? I don't know how difficult that is, as I have seen it's possible because there's a plugin called multi-world. Construct object from class, and you can make a world, I believe. And then you can add things to the world. But what I believe is that this world, although can be constructed, and you can actually spawn actor. From class, and then you can specify the world somehow. In C++, at least I know that. And you can spawn that actor into the world. And the problem is that world wouldn't be ticking unless you do some additional setup. It's actually quite complicated. But the viewport does that for you automatically. That's some of the pitfalls I think that I need to mention. Now, final thing here, which is the rendered material is on the render texture is on this RT headshot. That's interesting. So if you change the size, you can crank up the resolution of the render. This is basically the resolution of the renderer. You can also change what's rendered, whatever, right, in the rendered target texture. And also, yeah, because I crank up the resolution, I can actually crank up this image as well to have something bigger too. So have kind of like a huge headshot, which would be pretty cool there. So you have this giant headshot. So if you want to render like a full body of the character as like an inventory UI or something, this can be a great help. All right, hopefully this helps you to solve one of the technical issues you want to do in your game. And give me some comment on if you have a better idea or the better solution in C++ somehow. I still haven't spent time to research on how that U world is constructed and, you know, initialize and make it ticking. I think you need to manually tick it in another tick function, which is quite annoying there. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.